Hey there, this is Ill Factor and welcome to the channel. Recently, I shared a video on this channel from my Beat Academy course library that showcases a Beat Academy member, Gabby. And I walk alongside her, helping her complete the production of her song. And in this video, we're going to continue with that process. So if you haven't watched that video, I would encourage you, go back, watch part 1 of this video. There's a lot of information there about how I go about taking her vision for her music and adding the extra production that helps it get to the finish line. And so in this video, we're going to be talking about finalizing the production and then entering into the mixing stage. How do I create the balance and definition that I think this song deserves? Also, I just want to let you know that if you're looking for me and other leading industry professionals to come alongside and mentor you and help you level up your music production skill set and take your next step with your overall music, well, then I would encourage you to sign up for the Beat Academy Mentorship Program. And focusing on that word mentorship, this isn't just a Google search, coming to me and asking me, how do I get certain things done? This is me coming alongside you and pouring into you from my 21 years of doing this for a living. So there's a lot of nuances that go into helping you reach your goals with your music. And all that can be experienced in the journey of the Beat Academy Mentorship Program. So if you're interested in joining and you want to apply for that and you're serious about looking to have someone mentor you and help you take your next step forward with accomplishing your music goals, then go ahead and click the link below and go and apply for the mentorship program today. And I look forward to chatting with you soon. All right, let's jump right into this video. All right, welcome back to the breakdown. We're going to continue on going through and sharing my thought process as to how I arrived with the final arrangement. So where we left off, I was using the arcade plugin and experimenting with different sounds that I can add to the arrangement. And I've liked where we're at now. I'm going to walk you through some of the decisions and some of the nuances and details that I've done that really enhance and builds tension and release throughout the arrangement. So focusing on the beginning, originally we had the drums, the music loop starting off. And so what I thought would be good to build some contrast is just start off with the music loop that is unfiltered or untampered with, right? So then we're introducing the drums, the background ooze, the bass line comes in, and that really helps kind of the beginning intro, the music loop creates that nice little interest. You've got this cool music loop, then you got the drums, and then we clear right into the verses. And so everything's pretty much the same complete layout as what we covered earlier, with the exception of a couple things added. So as soon as we get to the chorus, I wanted something that would help the actual overall drums lift a little bit. So we're going to go and focus on the drums and what was added to them. So first thing I wanted to note is that I added a tambourine loop during the choruses. And this just helps kind of give a little bit of more lift with the drums when you add some extra percussion to it. So I'll solo the drums. So just muted the tambourine on and off so you can hear the difference. And then what we've got are the fills. And what I'm doing is purposely in this first chorus, I'm creating this nice little break here. And this is really to accent what the vocal is doing. It says bump, bump, and then that. And the reason why I did that was I felt it in my head. I just heard it in my head. I was like, bump, bump. I was like, well, let's just let everybody do that. So as you can see, I took the music out. I also altered the bass, just to have those two notes, those two stopping notes. So let's hear what it sounds like and with everybody so you can get the effect. Rise above all the mud like a lotus. So yeah, it creates that bam, bam, and that nice little stop. And I only do it for that first initial chorus. My reason thinking of doing it is just make it unique. I don't want to overdo it by having it on every chorus. Makes the first chorus a little bit more unique than the other ones. And then I want to kind of focus your attention onto some of the drum fills. So there's about 2 drum fills here. I think they're distinct or they might be the same. But what I decided to do was over here, you can see this drum fill is marked green. What I'm doing with this is I'm actually creating a new drum fill with the current drum fill. So there's actually some distinction. It can also be boring when you have the same drum fill happening throughout the whole arrangement. So here's a cool, clever way to add some new life to that. So what I did was I took the first half of that drum fill, which is this right here, and I've pitched it up. So it's up 2 semitones, and I duplicated it, which is this half here, and I've pitched it down 8 semitones. And it gives the illusion that it's this doot, 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 doot. So it's coming from a high pitch and then just bending all the way down. And it really just helps kind of set up the next chorus really well. Existence. And then the bridge, I take the drums out completely and I just have the music filtered out. I'll walk a little bit through that in a second. And that's it. And then what we've, so that's pretty much the arrangement, the thought process with how I'm treating the drums. Let me just quickly focus on what I'm doing for the drums. And all these decisions are gonna help kind of create the overall blend and balance of the mix. So with the drums, I kept the compressor like I did before, I showed you, not doing a lot of compression here. As a matter of fact, just kind of really taming this, maybe just about a gain of decibel reduction. Then I'm using the drum bus to add some distortion, but then I'm actually creating some warmth with the overall drum bus by using this EQ to take some low end away. There was a lot of low end rumble from the actual drum loop, and I took some high end away. And this is what's creating that nice warmth with the drums. So I'll solo that. So this is just warming up the drums. Just took a little bit of this 2K out. It was just was clashing a little bit with the vocals. And then I have the Slate Digital VCC channel. And this is just to add a little bit of saturation, but this is going to make sense because it's linked as a whole. I'm kind of trying to emulate the summing warmth and saturation you would get when you use analog summing or analog summing on a mixing board. So I've got this on every channel, and I'll walk you through that later on in this. But the thought process is, got the drums, and I started making these decisions after I had some of the instrumentation in place. So when I had some of the new parts in there, I go, you know what? A tambourine would help bring some life. Let me change this little drum fill here and there. And that really pays off well with the drums. Next, with the bass, I decided I actually don't have the sub bass playing. So I muted that because I thought the moto bass did a fine job on its own. So got the moto bass playing, set to the 70s P bass, doing some EQing here, overdriving it, giving it some nice crunch. And the crunch just helps have that bass stick out a little bit more in the high mids, and just doing some compression here. About 2 dB again. But notice what's going on here in the chorus. In the chorus section, I was thinking, how do I make that bass line pop out a little bit more, but not necessarily all the time, just accent certain notes. I can't tell you why I think these things. These are just random things that come through my mind. So as they come to my mind, I just experiment, say, hey, let me just try it. Let me give it a shot. And that's just kind of what needs to just happen. You want to give yourself the liberty to just experiment and see if it works. The worst, you try it out. If it doesn't work, guess what? You just mute it or delete the track. So what I decided to do was create another layer. So I just copy the same exact bass line, but I don't have the whole bass line playing. I only have certain notes played so that it accents those certain notes. And for that, I created just a simple 2 oscillator synth just set to a sawtooth. So I'm using Ableton Live's wavetable. And the wavetable, this is just going to create some nice width, some stereo width, get that texture that I was looking for. Can open up the frequency a little more. Yeah, so right there. Just making sure that the envelope is mapped to the filter frequency. I've got one oscillator set. I think they're both set to an octave lower. Set the unison to classic because I'm trying to get a wide sound. Just taking some low end away so it's not in the way of the bass. and some erosion for top end distortion, amp simulator, and delay. So check out what happens when we solo the bass. It's coming in on those certain notes, very, very subtle. And I'm not trying to make it really obvious too. I just wanted something to kind of sneakily pop out in certain notes when you hear everything all together. And once the music loop pretty much kept the same as we covered already, but then I added one more instrumentation. I needed something to help bridge the gaps between the syncopation and the chorus, something that sustained, something that had some texture. And although I was going through the arcade plugin and I found some pretty cool patches, I just didn't find something I was really in love with. So I said, well, let me just try playing a riff. And that worked out a lot better for me. So I'm using the Artua Juno, the JUN Juno, it's the Juno 106, but it's the Juno 6V plugin. And we've got just a basic patch. It's a standard patch that comes loaded, but I'm just doing a little tweaking to it. What we have here is this line that's going to really help create some nice glue with the rest of the instrumentation. And then what I do is down the road to make it a little bit different each chorus to add some, build up and intensity. I automate the frequency filter to just open up a little bit more, and that makes this sound a lot. So yeah, that's a really cool thing there. And I decided to just keep the Wurlitzer playing there as well. And we have our nice little star splash. This I did get from the arcade, so it's still in there. Automate the panning. I could use an automation, an auto panner, but I decided just to automate the panning for this time around, just on the first one here, as you can see. So it goes to the right speaker and then it just pans out to the left. Don't forget, you can also automate panning. Oftentimes I just forget I'm always automating volume, but hey, I can automate panning as well. So it gives a sense of like movement right on the downbeat of that. So let's take a listen to the whole chorus as a whole.
My business. World on. This is my time. Rise above all the mud like a lotus. Yeah, trust in my own one. Well, all the dream killers.
So it's nice and full. And it really is, it's hard to, it's always tempting for me to just add more and more. But again, you're going to see that as we get to the vocals, there's a lot of vocals, really cool vocal gymnastic stuff going on. And I didn't want all that to be lost with the adding of instrumentation. I thought, you know what? The Juno does a great job of just bridging the gaps there. And every time I added more things, it just got convoluted. And I was like, you know what? Let me strip it away and just tuck that Juno. And a cool thing to do is you see here, I'm using the utility plugin. Cool thing to do is to actually just give a little bit of width. I'm using the utility plugin, or you can use any stereo imaging plugin. And I'm actually just kind of giving a little bit more width. I'm creating this smearing of the stereo imaging so that as the synth feels a little wider, some of the main lead vocals will sit in the middle, and you can feel that depth and dimension take place. When you got things that are a little bit wider and certain things are in the middle, it gives the sense of depth there. So that's really helpful for that, being able to just have some things a little wider and things in the lead. So that's it with instrumentation. Let me just walk over to the bridge really quickly. As we transition there, I decided to have just the main loop filtered out. So I just I created a bridge track under the music loop group or bus. And I have the filter being automated.
Just relieve me, love me, breathe me. No matter what, gonna get back up. I'm just saying, judge me, leave me, love me, breathe me. gonna get back up? I'm just saying.
Cool, so what's going on here? You notice that in the first half, and it's a good break too, not having the drums, because negative drums in the bridge means more powerful drums once they're heard again in the chorus. Really important. That's how I'm building the tension to get this nice release in the last chorus. So, and we've heard the drums throughout the whole track. They really didn't change much. So let's give them a break in the bridge. And that's a great helpful tip to really create some dynamics in your arrangement. Now, halfway through the bridge, let's give a little bit lift. So I brought back the music loop that I have pitched a whole octave higher, and as well as the Wurlitzer there, just a little depth there. Then I introduced my little friend here that you might notice. I've got the Moog, it's an actual hardware synth here that I love just, sometimes just flicking on and being, well, let me just kind of jam out. And what I did was I just pretty much just ran my finger through the keyboard to get this sound. And just put a regular delay set there on every eighth note and ping pong, and voila, you got a nice cool transition from the bridge to the chorus.
I'm just saying.
What's cool is that you only hear it in the bridge. I first introduced it there, and then I played again to kind of introduce the vamp out here. So also with the arrangement is originally Gabby had the song end once the chorus just looped once at the end. So I thought it'd be cool. Let's just vamp this out, right? Let's duplicate the chorus, but let it be an instrumental break, and we'll do a fade. I'm doing a simple fade by having a utility plugin on my master bus, and I'm going to automate the actual volume of that. I don't want to do it with the master volume. I want the master volume there, but I'm just going to use a utility plugin and automate the gain on that to do this nice, cool fade. And so that's what's happening there. So we've got that nice little fade out, classic vintage type of vibe, type of fade going on. And that is really the overview of the arrangement. Now, when I received the Ableton Live session from Gabby, I noticed immediately that she had a lead vocal bus, background vocal bus, and harmony vocal bus. And they were all audio tracks that were set to input monitoring, meaning that when you click this, you're able to hear the audio that's being routed to that audio track. Now, it's no surprise that she has that set up because I've preached that from the mountaintops. It's a setup that I personally like doing. It's something that I have shown a lot of my Beat Academy members with previous courses, but there's a problem with this setup, and I know I'm kind of having to backtrack a little bit on this, but I'm glad I'm mentioning it here. The problem is that what I've known, and this is really regarding Ableton Live. So if you're following along, you're not using Ableton Live, then you really don't have to pay mind to this. But in particular with Ableton Live, the problem with this is, let's say I want this track. Let's say this is my lead vocal, and I'm going to route this, click the master output, and route it to my lead vocal bus, right? Which would be this audio track here. Now, the problem with that is, let's say I'm also using some delay on that lead vocal. Now, if I change the volume of this audio track, which is my lead vocal bus, it will not affect the volume of the auxiliary return, meaning the delay. So the amount of the delay on the vocal that you hear won't change, and it's supposed to. And so Ableton Live doesn't actually internally have it set up this way. So I was doing it like this because I visually liked having my audio buses there, and I can group everything together, and they will all still be routing here, and it'd be cool. But in reality, it's not going to work. So you would have to continue using the grouping or the group ecosystem as your buses. So just a little public service announcement here. So I'm going to delete these tracks, don't need them. And here's my all vocal group or bus. So when I use group, when I say bus, I'm using that interchangeably, okay? Bus, group, for me, is going to be the same thing. So here are my lead vocals. So I group up all the vocals together. Got the lead vox here. So if I open up that group, I've got the verse lead, pre-lead, And then I separated the chorus lead and the chorus double separately so that I can tweak them and give them their own kind of unique texture with some effects separately than the lead vocal. We've got a lot of stuff happening here. So we'll just give you the layout. Gabby has done a great job in creating some amazing layers and harmonies and vocal stacks here, which is great because that's what she really wants to do. That's what she wanted to excel in here. And like she mentioned earlier, having loops put down so that she can get cracking on this stuff, well, that's what matters. And so if she's putting a lot of effort and work into all these, parts, I want to make sure that the instrumentation doesn't overshadow that, which is a leading deciding factor for me in how much instrumentation I should put in there, right? So that's helping me out a lot. So let's walk through a little bit. And the way I do this is I try to get my lead vocal sitting well, and then I try to get my background chorus vocal sitting well. Then as I get them in a nice place, I then kind of go through the different pockets where she has harmonies coming in and different doubles coming in. And I just kind of go by piece as I'm listening to the song. It's like, oh, but that was a little too loud. I'll bring it down or something like that. So I treat them essentially the same. Because once I have my background vocal bus EQ'd and compressed the way I like it, I can kind of somewhat copy those settings onto like my harmonies and my other doubles and things like that. Because it's pretty much going to be in the same ballpark. So I'll start with the lead.
Keep my sights on my vision. I don't ask for permission. Got a light that I'm not dimming. Better throw on some shade.
So let's go ahead and bypass everything I have on it and listen to the vocal raw.
Keep my sights on my vision. I don't ask for permission. Got a light that I'm not dimming.
So besides the obvious gain difference, it's just more of the texture, right? So Gabby was really clear. It's like, hey, I'm not trying to get like really shiny or shimmery vocals here. I want it to feel warm, want it to feel like it's got some kind of vintage to it. So immediately what came to my mind is, all right, I'm gonna have some saturation on there. So so on the lead vocal bus, I started with a little bit of tuning, not a lot. As you can see here, I have it set to 49%. She did a great job knocking in the pocket. So not a lot of intonation problems. Then it's just an EQ. Just using this to kind of take away some of the low mid bump. This was really a lot of low mid heavy.
Keep my sights on my vision.
And just a little bit here. It's a dB. I mean, it's really noticeable on some highs. But really, this EQ is just to control this low mid stuff so that as I feed that to the compressor isn't using that added low mid information and compressing that too. I want to clean that up. And I'm using the 1176 by Universal Audio. I love this for female vocals too, especially vocals that have got some pocket and some swag, because it's quick and it gives the bite that I'm looking for.
Keep my sights on my.
So it's really just to, let me bring up the volume a little bit. Let me get a little bit of consistency, control the dynamics here. And then I'm using the de-esser because there's a lot of, as soon as the volume came up for this vocal, a lot of brittleness was sticking through. So what I did was I'm looking at my EQ here. It's giving me like some visualization. I'm saying, okay, I'm having a tough time finding the frequency I should be de-essing.
Keep my sights on.
And that's sights. And you can see it's right here in this area, which is that 8 to 9K. So I'll increase that and I'll just go to the frequency in my de-esser by waves here. And it's a really cheap, but it's a classic de-esser plugin from Waves. So I'm gonna keep the essing there and
keep my sights on my vision. I don't ask for permission.
I mean, even with the de-esser on, it's still really dominant, right? I don't want to completely remove the S's. You can harm the vocal by doing too much because then you give it a lisp. So that was helpful to identify like where in the range that's really where the sibilance is popping off. And then I'm using another de-esser here, but not to continue and de-ess the same frequency. This is more for the plosives and the P's and the things that just pop out and a lot of the sibilance. So that's what I'm using this EOS's de-esser for, to control that. Now I had the Fresh Air plugin by Slate Digital, but I was cranking it, the high air, just to give some sparkle and shimmer to the top end of the vocal, but it just ended up sounding too brittle. So I'm basically not even using it. It's at 3%. It's not really do that much. And then here we have the LA2A. So I love the combination of at the very beginning of my vocal chain for this, I'm using the 1176 to create a little bit of the bite, control some of that quick dynamics. Then at the end, I'm using the LA2A as a way to just more of a limiter, more giving me a consistent controlled volume of the vocal. Since I've added EQ, de-essing, all that, all the changes I made, now this LA2A is really gonna help give me the consistent vocal.
Keep my sights on my vision. I don't ask for permission.
And that's really what I'm looking for. And then the EQ after this was just really just to kind of control. Um, new artifacts just showed up a little bit when now that I've got everything leveled up. That's a little bit of low end here and a little bit of the highs there. And then the saturator. This is what's really helping me create some of the character with the vocal here. What's helping is I'm using the O tape mode, and I'm just dirtying up the vocal a little bit.
Keep my sights on my vision. I don't ask for permission. Got a light that I'm not.
What I like about using the Fat Filter Saturn distortion is that it has this 4-band tone or 4-band EQ, and I can just bring down, because once I distort the vocal, there's new information that's now going to be heightened or more present. And a lot of that was with the low mid, so I can lower that a little bit, lower some of the sparkle, and make it feel very warm like that. So this is the primary blueprint for how I'm going to treat Gabby's vocals. And so I'm going to copy similarly to let's go over here to the chorus. So same procedure. We've got EQing. In this case, now I'm flipping, and now I've got the LA2A first here, because these group vocals aren't doing a lot of that pocket or rhythmic movement that the lead is doing. These are sung out vocals. So I just wanted a smooth, limited, almost like a limiter, but a smoother compression for that. And then I'm using a stereo de-esser to just deal with some of the de-essing as a whole, as a group. Adding some shimmer here. So what's cool is I'm adding more shimmer than I normally would do to the lead, but I'm adding it to the background vocals. So that's a little bit of the balance. When the background vocals come in, you've got some warm lead vocals, but you got this nice shimmery background vocals here on the sides, and that's cool too. So same thing with the filter, a little bit more on the mix, warm tape here, I'm giving it some drive. So just a little characteristic, as you can see here. So let's take it to the chorus.
Notice, this is my time, my moment. Rise above all the mud like a lotus.
And so I do the same procedure here for the verse harmonies, same thing. I just copied the same thing that I did with the chorus group or my chorus bus. I'm going to drag and drop that over to the pre's, the harmonies, and any other section. So these Supreme here, the Supremes, I love that title for these this bus here. These are the oohs that we hear going on in the song. So some EQ to take away the low end. We have the LA2A again to just control that. Very similar, as I said, this is the same copy, even with the Saturn. But here's what's really unique. This is what's giving it couple things happening here. I'm using the Studio D stereo chorus. It's a very subtle chorus. This is just creating a little bit of that width here on the whole group. And then I'm using the Waves Factory cassette plugin. Love this plugin. This is really giving it that low quality type of vibe. So we'll take this off. Here's with it on. So yeah, really making it crunchy and vintagey with the tape machine. So I like that. And it just sets that vibe nice, and it helps me just kind of sit that in the back. Once I got that place, it's all now about the effects that we're going to run these vocals through that really help create the depth and dimension with them. So we'll start. I'm using A and B, effects A and B for the instruments. I believe A, I have a delay here. And B, I actually have a pedal, some distortion EQ taken out, and a flanger plugin by Waves. It's one of my favorite flanger plugins, but I'm using that mostly on the drums. This creates some nice movement on the auxiliary. Really, really cool stuff. So that just helps create some nice movement and actually helps with creating some depth in there. It just creates a nice little stereo field. Now, then C through H are the effects that I have going on for all the vocals. It's like, dang, the return track game is strong on this one. Well, yeah, I like using multiple effects to kind of create the ultimate effect that I want. So for C, we have a H delay. This is going to be an eighth note delay with the right signal out of phase. So it just gives a lot more of this width to it, cutting the lows and cutting the highs, setting the feedback down. But what's important is I'm using a side compressor side chain to the lead vocal bus. Here's why I'm doing that, because there's a lot of movement here, especially with the rap. I wouldn't say the rap, but especially with her flow in verse 2.
Well, all the dream killers, vision busters, hope stealers, bliss blockers, got nothing on me.
So it just helps the delay tuck out of the way while she's doing her thing. And at any moment, rest, it just comes up and breathes. So I like doing that. D is my space. So that's my Valhalla reverb. Smooth plate, but a really short decay. Didn't want to have a big, like, cave type sounding reverb here. So we're just giving a little bit of that. And then another delay here on E. Okay. This is a 16th note delay. So a little bit of that slapback type of vibe.
Well, all the dream killers, vision busters, hope stealers, bliss blockers.
Right? And that's set to stereo, just doing a little EQing after that. And then F is my doubler from Waves. This helps just create, I particularly use this a lot in the chorus, just sometimes to have the lead vocal just feel a lot fuller and bigger. And that's why I have my chorus lead with a lot more of that here. So, and you know, you could say, why don't you just simply automate that? But again, there's a couple other things that I'm doing here for the chorus lead. And then G is a, I think this is what I was just experimenting with. This is the Sunset Sound Reverb by IK Multimedia. Really cool reverb. It's emulating a lot of the rooms that are in this famous studio. And I'm using this not so much as a reverb, but almost like a slapback, another slapback delay.
Well, all the dream killers, vision busters, hope stealers, bliss blockers.
So I'm not using this on the lead that much, but I do use it on a couple doubles or ad-libs, stuff that creates this cool dimension and feel. And then I have another reverb, and this one's a hall. This is the R verb here. I have it set to a hall. Why a hall? Well, because this is going to really come into play when I get over to the bridge. So the bridge section, the lead is all by herself, and I'm just giving a lot more of that hall reverb to create that space.
Judge me, leave me, love me, breathe me, no matter.
And that's what we're doing there. So when that section happens, the vocal feels a little bit more dreamy because it has some more space to live in. And so I start just kind of mixing this around. So the harmonies and the oohs, most over here with the chorus, the background vocals. With the background vocals, I'm always going to send a little bit more reverb to, a little bit more of the effects, a little more of the doubling, because then that helps create the dimension. With more reverb, it sends those background vocals further back in the mix, but yet it also creates a nice atmosphere for the vocals to live in.
Judge me, leave me, stay in.
So if I was just to solo the vocals,
Don't notice. This is my time.
What's cool about having an all vocal bus is that I can then treat all the vocals with just a slight little bit of EQing, right? So nothing crazy. This is just stuff to tame as I'm listening. And I do this EQ, I'll listen to the song top to bottom a couple times. And what I like doing is I have my Ableton Live push here, and I can assign like the knob. And I would just, as I'm listening, I'm like, yeah, let me just tame a little bit of the low mids and stuff like that on the fat filter. But I'm not doing, as you can see, a lot of crazy EQing. Then I have the Soothe plugin, and this is just kind of automatically taking out any frequencies that are resonating with all the vocals as a whole. I know that the low mids are a bit of a problem, and this 8K2, this is treating all the vocals as compounded together. So let's just do this. let me just go ahead and bypass the effects so we can just hear the dry vocal.
Don't notice. This is my time.
Yeah, so that was some of the stuff that was just a little bit of an issue that I was like, you know what? Let me just have this tame it just a little bit. I'm not doing a crazy amount there. And I think one thing that's really important to note is my panning and how I'm panning the vocals, because that ultimately is going to really create the depth and the width that I'm looking for with the vocal performance. So obviously with the lead vocals, I want them in the middle. I'm going to have them pan straight into the center, as you can see here. But then as we start going into some of the doubling and the background vocals, if I open up the groups, for instance, the chorus, I'll have hard pan left, right, hard pan left, right. And then these higher background vocal harmony parts, I've got them about 25, just so that I can give a little bit of space to the left and right, but it just helps kind of fill in that whole, the stereo imaging there. So this is probably like 25. I don't know, I'm just eyeballing it there, but just giving a little bit, and I'll repeat that here and there. Same thing, we've got the Supremes. They're all hard pan left and right, left and right. We've got about maybe like 4 tracks for each. I'm copying the same thing for the harmonies. So what's cool about these verse harmonies and having them pan hard left, right in certain areas is that you've got the lead vocal performing, and then you've got these harmonies jumping out. Now, what makes it work is that you don't have to actually boost the volume as loud if you've got things pan hard left and hard right. So I can lower the harmony volume a little bit. The lead still dominates, but because it's pan hard left and right, they stick out regardless. And so you hear, it just creates this nice blanket of vocals when you do it like that. So it's important to note. I didn't want to, go through this breakdown without noting the importance of panning and placing the vocals in strategic locations. So with these vocals, I want to make sure that they are, just covering the whole stereo field, and that's what's creating a nice vocal blanket with all the vocals. And then I'm using the Slate Digital Virtual Mix Rack. So let me just spend some time talking about this as we wrap up and lead over to the master bus. So again, warmth and vintage is like the overall theme here. So I'm trying to create some depth by not just necessarily depth. I mean, honestly, you don't need this plugin to create the depth. The depth is how I'm achieving a lot of the depth is my approach to getting the overall balance with this is that I start mixing this in mono, right? Like once I get all the main elements in place, I start with my drums and my bass, getting them sitting in the right place here. And I just kind of incorporate the music, and I like mixing in mono because then what I'm trying to do is like I'm checking the volume. Like, okay, here the bass is a little too loud or whatever. And mono helps me focus in on all the information that's gonna be in the mid, who's loud, who's not, right? So I'll vibe with that rhythm section for a little bit. Could bring down the tambourines a little bit. Or just make them warmer. I could use that EQ. Take some of the highs out. And as I start adding in the vocals, I gauge more or less where everything's at, but I'm doing all this in mono.
This is my time. Rise above all the mud like a lotus.
So I'm just trying to gauge, is the vocal too overpowering? Is it too, where's everything at? Then I switch it off mono, give a little context here. And that helps me kind of get a general ballpark. So then bring back to the Slate Digital plugin. This is a great way to kind of get that analog console feel, not console, but console that you're using. It just adds a little bit. So let me go over to the master bus And I can hit the group bypass here and see if you can notice the difference. We'll let it play, and then I'll hit the group bypass. So subtle, but yeah, you hear a little more definition happen to the track. It just lifts a little bit. So that's what I'm using. And the way I do it is I put it at the end of every track here. So every track has that same plugin here. Got it on everything. And then on the master bus, I have it, but I'm using the mix bus. And I make sure to set the group to 1. So that when I hit group bypass, it's going to bypass all of the modules that's on every track. And I can switch out the console if I wanted to. So we can go to the SSL or the Neve. I like the Neve much better. So I'm always been a Neve boy. So I'm going to rock the Neve. We'll leave it there. So yeah, that's it. And then what I'm starting to do is once I kind of get the bend and balance well, I start bringing in some stuff on the master bus. I've got the Bax EQ plugin. This is a really cool, clean, subtle EQ. I'm making sure I'm getting rid of anything from 30 hertz and below. And then just a little bit of boost of like 98. What's giving it some of that warmth is I'm actually cutting, believe it or not, 18 and above. So if I take this out, look. So yeah, it's I'm cutting off some of that sparkle and that air. So it's gonna be, that's what gives a lot of the warmth too. And then I was trying out this plugin, Golfos. It's kind of similar to what Soothe is doing. It's just balancing out the overall balance, the tonal balance of the song. And what this is doing is just kind of just giving a little bit, boosting the frequencies that it could use more of, and taming some of the ones that it's just taming frequencies that I don't really need, or not that I don't personally need. But the way this is working is, as the overall tonal balance, as it analyzes the tonal balance, it's saying, hey, these are some pretty harsh frequencies. Let's just go ahead, or like there's more of this than this, so let's balance it out. And that's what this is tending to do. I like what it was doing, so I just left it on there, and then it's just doing some compression here with the Waves SSL compressor, set to 4:1, the slowest attack, quick release, get about. So I like where that's at there. And then I've got the Oxford limiter to just give me the overall volume and make sure that everything's good. And I'll put this on just to send it over to Gabby so she can hear it at a higher volume. But without this off, we're at about. Yeah, we're at a good spot there, and I could send that off for mastering and get it mastered. This plugin that you see here has been a tremendous help in kind of, getting and testing my environments here. So this is the new Sound ID by SonarWorks. Love what they've been doing. And I've been using this. You can use it to EQ your room so that you can get a flat signal out of your studio monitors or headphones. So it's really great for that. I'm going to be doing a whole video on this, but I'm actually using it more, not just for the room stuff, because my ears are already used to the speakers here, but I'm using it for this transition check. Car 1, car 2, car 3. What does it sound like in the in-ear monitors, laptop? I could put the studio NS10s, or NS11, but NS10s. And the way what I'm doing with this is when I use it for these kind of references, I'm not trying to say, oh, it sounds too muddy, or oh, it sounds too bright now. I don't try to adjust the frequency stuff, because obviously it's in a whole nother, it's adding an EQ curve to it already. So what I'm checking for is when I switch it to these different environments, what pops out more? Does the vocal pop out more? Does the drums pop out more? Does the synth pop out more? So I'm getting more, being able to kind of just get different scenarios being checked out, and it kind of helps me with the guessing game sometimes. So, all right, now I think it'd be cool to wrap this up with just some A B comparison. So I imported the actual original bounce of Gabby's session before I did any additions to it. And I'm just going to play a couple sections of the original, and then I'll switch it over in A B to mine. And just to make sure, I made sure that the external output of the original track is not going through my plugin. So I have it set to outputs 1 and 2. So let's check out the verse.
Keep my sights on my vision. I don't ask for permission. Got a light that I'm not dimming. Better throw on some shades. Keep my sights on my vision. I don't ask for permission. Got a light that I'm not dimming. Better throw on some shades. Cause you're dealing with yourself and all of your own limits. By the way, cause you're dealing with yourself and all of your own limits. By the way, your perception of me ain't none of my business. The world don't notice. This is my time, my rise above all the mud like a lotus. This is my time, my this is my time, my rise above all the mud like.
Well, this was a really fun project to be a part of. And so I want to thank first Gabby for allowing me to just jump on this project. I'm sure she didn't mind. And there's a lot of cool things that I wanted to kind of notice that as we walk through here. And the overall goal was to help you and encourage you to know that loops can be a very inspiring starting point. And you can actually use them as this inspiration to actually draw an arrangement from. So if you ever feel trapped or somewhat like held back by the loops and not sure where to go from them, just think of the principles that we shared throughout this breakdown, and hopefully they can encourage you to get out of that rut and start making some more music. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.